Have you ever noticed how the most powerful stories in your life aren't the ones with the most complex plots or the fanciest special effects? They're the ones that made you feel something deep in your soul, the ones that stayed with you long after the book was closed or the credits rolled. That's because storytelling isn't just an art form. It's the oldest and most effective way humans have communicated since we first gathered around fires in caves. Today, I want to explore why mastering the art of storytelling might be the most valuable skill you can develop in 2025, regardless of your profession. Think about it. When was the last time a spreadsheet made you cry? When did a PowerPoint presentation fundamentally change how you see the world? Yet a well-crafted story can do both in minutes. Stories bypass our logical defenses and speak directly to our emotions, making them the ultimate persuasion tool in a world drowning in information but starving for meaning. The science behind storytelling's power is fascinating. When we hear facts and figures, only the language processing parts of our brain activate. But when we experience a story, our entire brain lights up as if we're actually living the events ourselves. This phenomenon, called neural coupling, explains why stories are remembered up to 22 times more effectively than facts alone. Our brains are literally hardwired for narrative. In the business world, this translates to real dollars. Companies with compelling brand stories outperform their competitors by up to 30% in customer loyalty and retention. Look at Apple. They don't sell computers. They sell a story about thinking differently and challenging the status quo. Nike doesn't sell shoes. They sell the hero's journey of overcoming obstacles. These companies understand that in a marketplace where products are increasingly similar, the story you tell is often your only true differentiator. But storytelling isn't just for marketers and advertisers. It's becoming essential across all professions. Scientists who can translate complex research into compelling narratives receive more funding. Doctors who communicate through stories see better patient compliance. Even in the tech world, the most successful startups aren't necessarily those with the best technology, but those who can tell the most compelling story about how they'll change the world. I remember speaking with a brilliant engineer who couldn't understand why his revolutionary product wasn't gaining traction. His technology was objectively superior to competitors in every measurable way. But when I asked him to explain why his product mattered, he launched into a 10-minute monologue about technical specifications that would have put an insomniac to sleep. His competitor, meanwhile, had crafted a simple story about how their product would transform their customers' daily lives. Guess which one investors and customers chose? The rise of artificial intelligence has only made storytelling more valuable. As AI increasingly handles data analysis, technical writing, and other logical tasks, the uniquely human ability to craft emotional narratives that resonate with other humans becomes more precious. In fact, a recent McKinsey report suggested that jobs requiring storytelling skills are among the least likely to be automated in the next decade. So what makes a story effective? It's not complexity, it's emotional truth. The most powerful stories follow a simple structure that's been proven effective across cultures and throughout history. This structure isn't just useful for novelists or filmmakers. It's a template that can transform everything from your next presentation to how you explain your career path in a job interview. Let's break down this universal story structure. Every compelling story begins with a hook, something that immediately grabs attention and creates curiosity. In business, this might be a startling statistic or a provocative question that challenges assumptions. For example, when Airbnb pitches to investors, they don't start with their business model. They start with the question, what if you could live anywhere, even just for a night? After the hook comes the introduction, where you establish the world of your story and introduce the main characters. In a business context, this might mean describing the current market landscape and introducing the key stakeholders. This is where you set expectations and begin building the relationship between your audience and your narrative. Then comes the rising action, where you introduce conflict or tension. Every great story needs obstacles to overcome. In business storytelling, this is where you identify the problem your product solves, or the challenge your organization faces. The more your audience can feel the pain of this problem, the more invested they'll be in your solution. The climax is the turning point, the moment of transformation where everything changes. In product marketing, this is where you reveal your solution and how it addresses the problem in a unique way. The best climaxes feel both surprising and inevitable, creating an aha moment for your audience. The falling action shows the consequences of this transformation, demonstrating how the world is different now. For businesses, this might include case studies or testimonials that prove your solution works in real-world applications. Finally, the resolution provides closure while pointing toward future possibilities. This is where you summarize the key takeaways and, crucially, include a call to action that tells your audience exactly what to do with the information you've shared. I've seen this structure transform even the driest corporate presentations into compelling narratives. A pharmaceutical executive I worked with was struggling to get approval for a new research initiative. Her initial presentation was packed with data, but generated little enthusiasm. We restructured it as a story, beginning with a patient whose life could be transformed by this research, detailing the obstacles to developing the treatment, revealing their novel approach as the turning point, and ending with a vision of a world where this disease was manageable. The same data was there, but now embedded in a narrative that made stakeholders emotionally invested in the outcome. The project was approved with increased funding. But storytelling isn't just about structure. It's about authenticity. The most powerful stories come from a place of truth. This doesn't mean every story must be factually autobiographical, but it should contain emotional truth that resonates with your audience's lived experience. Consider how this plays out in leadership. The most effective leaders don't just issue directives. They tell stories that help their teams understand the why behind their work. When Howard Schultz returned as CEO to turn around a struggling Starbucks in 2008, he didn't just implement new policies. He told a story about returning to the company's roots and rediscovering what made Starbucks special in the first place. This narrative gave employees a sense of purpose during difficult changes and helped customers reconnect with the brand. The digital age has transformed how we tell stories, but not their fundamental importance. Social media platforms have created new storytelling formats, from Instagram stories to TikTok videos, but the principles remain the same. The most viral content still follows classic narrative structures, just adapted for shorter attention spans and more visual consumption. What's fascinating is how these new platforms have democratized storytelling. Anyone with a smartphone can now reach a global audience. This has led to an explosion of authentic voices that might never have been heard in the gate-kept media landscape of previous generations. Some of the most influential figures in culture today built their following not through traditional credentials, but through their ability to tell compelling stories about their lives, their passions, or their expertise. Take Mr. Beast, who transformed from an obscure YouTube creator to one of the most influential entertainers in the world through his mastery of narrative tension and emotional payoff. Or consider how Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez used Instagram stories to bring audiences behind the scenes of Congress, turning complex policy discussions into accessible narratives that engaged voters who had previously felt disconnected from politics. The rise of these new storytellers has created both opportunities and challenges for traditional institutions. Companies can no longer control their brand narratives as tightly as they once did. A single compelling story from an employee or customer can reshape public perception more powerfully than a $1 million advertising campaign. This means organizations must become more transparent and authentic in their own storytelling, because inauthentic narratives will be quickly exposed and countered by more genuine voices. This democratization has also raised important questions about responsibility in storytelling. As the barriers to reaching massive audiences have fallen, the ethical dimensions of narrative have become more pressing. Stories can unite or divide, illuminate or mislead. The same narrative techniques that make stories powerful tools for positive change can also make them dangerous vehicles for manipulation. We've seen this play out in political discourse. where competing narratives often seem to describe entirely different realities. The same events can be framed in radically different ways, depending on the storyteller's perspective and goals. This isn't new. Propaganda has existed as long as storytelling itself. But the speed and scale at which narratives now spread is unprecedented. This makes developing critical thinking about stories more important than ever. We need to become not just better storytellers, but more discerning story consumers, able to recognize when narratives are being used to manipulate rather than illuminate. This means asking questions about who benefits from a particular story, what information might be missing, and whether the emotional response a story triggers is proportionate to the underlying facts. But even as we develop this critical lens, we shouldn't lose sight of storytelling's tremendous potential for good. Stories have always been how humans make sense of a complex and often chaotic world. They help us find meaning in our experiences and connect with others across differences of background and belief. At their best, stories expand our capacity for empathy by allowing us to temporarily inhabit perspectives different from our own. This empathic dimension of storytelling may be its most valuable aspect in our increasingly polarized society. When we truly engage with someone else's story, not just the facts of their experience, but the emotions and values that give those facts meaning, we create the possibility of genuine understanding. This doesn't mean we'll always agree, but it does mean we might disagree more productively with recognition of our shared humanity. So how can you become a better storyteller? It starts with becoming a better story listener. Pay attention to the narratives that move you, whether in books, films, advertisements, or conversations. What makes them effective? How do they create emotional connection? The best storytellers are usually voracious consumers of others' stories. Practice is also essential. Look for opportunities to incorporate narrative techniques into your everyday communication. This doesn't mean turning every email into an epic saga, but it might mean framing your next project update as a journey rather than a status report, or explaining a complex concept through an illustrative anecdote rather than abstract description. Finally, cultivate authenticity in your storytelling. This means developing self-awareness about your own values and experiences, and finding ways to connect them genuinely to the messages you want to convey. Authentic stories resonate because the audience can feel the truth behind them, even when the specific details are unfamiliar. As we move deeper into the digital age, with artificial intelligence increasingly handling routine tasks, our uniquely human capacity for meaningful storytelling becomes more valuable. The machines can generate content, but they can't yet create narratives that truly resonate with the human heart. That remains our domain, and it's a skill worth cultivating. So whether you're a business leader trying to inspire your team, an entrepreneur pitching investors, a teacher engaging students, or simply someone trying to connect more deeply with friends and family, remember the power of story. In a world overflowing with information but starving for meaning, those who can craft narratives that create genuine emotional connection will always have an audience. I'd love to hear about a story that changed how you see the world. Was it a book, a film, a personal experience shared by a friend? What made it so powerful for you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found value in this exploration of storytelling, please subscribe for more content at the intersection of communication, psychology, and professional development. And if you're interested in practical storytelling techniques, check out my video on the science of memorable presentations, where I break down specific methods for applying these principles in professional settings. Remember, we are all storytellers by nature. The question isn't whether you'll tell stories, it's whether you'll tell them with intention and skill. Your story matters. Make it count.